Hello and welcome to Revive Your Soul. In this video I want to talk about trauma bonding and what it is, understanding how it happens, and I want to talk about taking responsibility for your own healing. Now, we develop bonds in childhood for our own survival and protection. And that way, if our safety is threatened, we've got somebody to turn to for protection and security. And trauma bonding is one of the reasons it is so hard to heal from these relationships. The damage caused puts you in a state of confusion. It's like a pain that emanates from your soul. And at the end of the relationship, you had no idea that this abuse was taking place. Now, bonds could be created within hours. But trauma bonding, this type of bonding that you've experienced, was deliberate. You've been isolated from friends and family and support networks. The only person that you can turn to for support and protection is the abuser themselves. So bonding is a process that takes place where we feel more important towards one another, and it's developed when we spend a lot of time together building that trust. The trauma bonding that you experience in emotionally abusive and toxic relationships has a different purpose. The purpose is about gaining control and power over your life. In previous videos I've talked about the idealization stage, the devaluation, discard, that cycle of abuse that happens. They were creating a trust. It was manufacturing a love that you might never have experienced before, attention that you might never have experienced before, a validation that you may never have experienced before. And then they move on to the devaluation, which was part of this bonding. They justify their behavior where you see the red flags. They might say that it's you. They might say that you have trust issues, that you're too sensitive, and they might backtrack to the idealization stage and they shower you with a few more gifts. Now, this is a push and pull within the relationship that keeps you hooked, because you start to question, why would a person who's treating me so well want to hurt me or do this to me? This is where your boundaries get blurred, or you overlook things that you would never overlook ordinarily. You believe they care about you, creating even more bonding. So the damage they cause puts you in a state of confusion. You had no idea this abuse was taking place. Just like Chinese water torture, it happens so very slowly. And this is a technique they use to bond you. They're telling you this is your fault, getting you ready and training you to take the responsibility, everything that goes wrong. And then you start to question, was it your fault? Have you experienced this? It was your gut that was telling you this, but you're overriding the gut feeling and you're overriding your intuition that is telling you something's wrong. It's somebody who treats you so well. How could you see this as abuse? They, on the other hand, have played the victim. They roll out their poor childhood stories, the awful things that happened to them, other relationships. And if you look back and you start to look at their previous relationships, you might see patterns in those. And what they're able to do is trigger your emotions of shame and guilt and abandonment. They're using this push and pull of emotions. And it's like a game that you don't have the rules to. They get you hooked on a cocktail of hormones and then they change the rules. Ivan Pavlov did some research on salivation in dogs. And I use this story because it's quite personal to me, because I was accused of being like Pavlov's dog and responding to my phone. What happened quite a few years prior to that statement was that when I missed a phone call, I was then reprimanded for not answering my phone. And then over a period of years, I was then accused of having my phone too much. I responded to other people. I was answering the phone, not knowing who was phoning me. It was an unknown number. I used Pavlov's dog as a great example of how this happens, how a part of the trickery happens, the manipulation of emotions happen. So Pavlov was doing some research on salivation within dogs. He started to notice when his assistants walked into the lab, the dogs started salivating at the sound of the footsteps because they'd associated the time of day and the footsteps with food. He then started to investigate whether the dogs would still salivate if they just heard the footsteps, and they did. Around the same time, Edward Thorndike was observing cats' behaviour, and he had these puzzle boxes. So what he discovered was the cat's behaviours were strengthened when they experienced success or failure. And he discovered that the cat eventually stumbled on the correct set of behaviours to exit the box. And then there was research with pigeons, B.F. Skinner. He taught them how to recognise words for reward of food. Along with the other two studies, this was how they discovered stimulus or behavioural responses. It was actually John B. Watson that was credited with creating the school of behaviourism. So over a period of time, you were trained like the elephant that's tied up. Even if you took the chains off, it would still stand in the same place. Its soul's been crushed. In these relationships, the abuser put themselves in the place of the caregiver. They isolated you from friends and family. They discredited them. And they made it look like they were the only person you could really trust. So when your security was threatened, it was them you turned to. And at the end of the relationship, you're left addicted to this cocktail of hormones, and you're wanting your next fix, reaching out, craving. And it's this craving that makes it so hard to break from these relationships. In fact, given the chance, you might accept any crumb thrown your way. If they've got you at the right time, when you're really low and the pain is horrific, you'll accept anything from them. They set new boundaries, you agree to them, and they break them. At the beginning of the relationship, you probably thought you had really good boundaries, and this was part of their game, was to see how they could push, what you'd put up with, and how much they could get away with. Their broken, fragile self-esteem is what drives them. They need to prove to themselves how powerful they are. They're like vampires, sucking the energy out of you, sucking the soul out of you. And they might come back hoovering, but it's really an attempt just to see how much pain you're in, what power they still have over you, until their attention is caught by something else. It might be they were bored in their new relationship, or it hasn't been secured as quickly, and they're still looking for attention. They've got time to kill. Like a cat plays with a dead mouse, they play with you and your emotions. They want to see whether they can evoke that power and see how much control they had over you and what they still have over you. So when the drama is over, there isn't really much left for them, apart from seeing you in pain. This is their supply, knowing they caused that pain. So the painful bit about coming to terms with the end of the relationship is the trauma bonding. There are these invisible chains that hold you to this person, hold you to the relationship. You believe this is all your fault. You believe that if you'd done something or said something, or maybe hadn't done something or said something, you'd be in a different position. You'd still be in the relationship, and perhaps that's true, but your boundaries would have been squashed if there was any left, and you had nothing left to give them. Now, this journey takes courage. You might experience emotional flashbacks, toxic shame, core wounds, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and grief. And people underestimate the amount of time that is needed at the end of these relationships to heal. You start to uncover everything you thought was true was actually a lie. You need to grieve the relationship. You need to grieve the character that they were playing, because you weren't in love with them, you were in love with the person they were portraying. You need to grieve the fake future you created. And you might find yourself being triggered that each time of that realization that this was fake, this wasn't real. In Mario Martinez's book, The Mind-Body Code, he talks about 3 core wounds, which are shame, guilt and abandonment. So one of the things you can do as part of your healing journey is discover what is going on. Ask your body, is this shame? Am I feeling shame? A lot of people feel shame that they didn't do anything, the way they treated other people, the way they pushed people away, shame about being conned, shame about all sorts of different types of shame, and guilt is another big one. Whereas the abuser's biggest wound is abandonment, and that is one of the reasons they behave the way they do, because in every step they're trying to avoid being abandoned. And they will have also triggered abandonment wounds if you've experienced this before, maybe in childhood. You might have shame that you've lost finances or property or goods, shame that you believed all the lies, shame that you didn't see through the mask. And it's this shame that stops people from talking to friends and family when they start to see some of this going on, who might have tried to tell you about the concerns they have about the relationship or had about the relationship. They might feel guilt at the red flags that they saw and they did nothing about. Guilt that they didn't see the damage being caused. Guilt at being really naive. So it's now your responsibility to heal these wounds. Trauma bonding brings up real physical and emotional pain within the body. Ask yourself where it's coming from and what the trigger is. Where are these wounds? And when you experience a flashback, whether that's the pain of an experience that you had in the relationship, again, ask what that's about, what your body is trying to tell you that needs healing. For years I've spoken about crying until there's nothing left, not stopping it if you are in that position to be able to do that, to laying in bed and just allowing that emotion to go right out of you. And it was, I can't actually remember the year, but it was, I saw a bombing in, say, Israel or somewhere like that. It was the aftermath of a car bomb, and these women were on the streets and they were howling, really howling. And I was mesmerised and shocked at the same time at the rawness of their emotion. And then I started to sort of query that as to whether that is the way to heal. Because when we contain our grief, we're just putting it on hold for a period of time. It's like a beach ball being held underwater. When we're ready to deal with it, it comes back up. But this wasn't. This was allowing those emotions out, a raw emotion, for healing. If you're in that position that you're able to do that, experiment with it. Because I have tried it quite a few times. I first tried it in 2003 and I actually ended up laughing at the end of it. There was nothing left of that grief and that pain. Allow these memories to come up. They're like little bubbles. Allow them to come up and then start to question where they really come from. They were triggered by the relationship, but they will go deeper. Something you experienced in school maybe, something you experienced in your childhood. Find out what the emotion is behind it. Try and explore it like you would, say, holding a diamond up to in the light. Allow yourself to explore the memory and why you feel this way. It is your responsibility to heal your wounds. Maybe you saw this damaged inner child in them, and that's why you stayed in the relationship. My belief is that on some level they came to mirror your wounds, to show you how amazing you are and to give you this opportunity to heal. This was a gift, and I know it might not feel like it at the moment. You can find out about trauma bonding and some of the other terms that I've used in my book, The A to Z of Emotional Abuse. There's lots of different ways you can purchase it. I'll put the links below in the description. Please, if this has helped you in some way, it might help somebody else, so please like, share and comment. If there's anything else that's helped you in your healing journey, again, put those in the comments if it might help somebody else. And I'm sending you loads and loads and loads of love.